you doing, guys? It's Dave Hinds here from Bounty Hunters Band, and going to talk a bit of guitar stuff with Jakam right now.
So, David, how did you first get into guitar playing? What got you obsessed and interested with it?
Well, mate, I grew up in the sort of classic era of rock, I guess, when the British invasion and stuff was happening. So when I was growing up and going to school, we had, bands like the Beatles, the Stones, the Animals, the Who, Kinks, all those great early sort of 60s rock bands on the radio, and that was what first sparked my interest in playing guitar. And then later on, I got into your sort of classic heavy rock bands. I heard the Cream Wheels of Fire live at the Fillmore album with Eric Clapton playing guitar, and the track Crossroads on that album. Actually, when I heard that, I knew that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, was play rock guitar and blues rock guitar, and got into the usual suspects: Clapton and Hendrix and Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page with Zeppelin, all those guys, Richie Blackmore, Leslie West, a whole heap of those guys in that classic rock era. So that's what really got me going.
Do you remember what your first guitar was?
Yeah, I do actually. And it's a pretty typical story, like most people. I got a really El Cheapo acoustic with this, steel strings. The strings are about half an inch off the fretboard. It was nearly impossible to play, and I know most people start out with something like that, and it sort of certainly toughens you up for later life. But yeah, that was my first guitar when I was about 10 or 11, and I had a couple of lessons, and then it went under the bed until I was about 14, and that's when I really got into playing guitar seriously then.
What about your first electric guitar, David? What was that?
Well, that was it was an Emperador, which was a Japanese brand, and you've got to remember this is like, we're talking late 60s here,
yep.
Around 67, 68. And it was kind of like a 335 Gibson, like a semi-acoustic, with F-holes. And it wasn't a bad guitar, really. Actually, I sort of played it in my first bands at high school and had a couple of humbuckers. And, it wasn't a very expensive guitar, but it did the job.
Do you still have it, or what happened to it?
No, mate, I don't still have it. Actually, I wish I did. I've got ancient photos of it, but no, it kind of got traded in on my first, good guitar, my first Gibson, which was a Les Paul recording model in 1972. So the old Emperador got traded on that, and then I became a Gibson player after that, and which was pretty cool.
That's awesome. So what was your first band? Was it a covers band or originals band?
Well, we were actually doing, and I said this was like I was about 14, and it's still at high school, and all those bands I mentioned earlier on, the Beatles, the Stones, and all those bands were around. So we used to do covers of their songs, like House of the Rising Sun by the Animals. I think most guys of my era started off with that one, but we also wrote our own songs right from the beginning. We were writing originals right from the start, and the band was called Hot Ice. So you got to remember that was the 60s, man. That's a pretty naff name, but we were called Hot Ice. We did the school dances and stuff like that, and that's when we got the bug for rock and roll.
Awesome. And that obviously led you on to playing with guys like Dave Evans, and now you're in the Bounty Hunters. How did that all come about?
Yeah, well, mate, as I said, it's been a lifetime of music for me. After the school bands, my first really professional band, I guess, would have been Marshall Brothers in Newcastle. I grew up in Newcastle, New South Wales. And, with Marshall Brothers, we did a lot of Yes sort of stuff, like prog rock sort of stuff. That was sort of mid-70s, around 74, 75. And then, I joined Rabbit, which had Dave Evans on lead vocals, who was the original singer from AC/DC, of course, before Bon. And I knew those guys. I'd known those guys for years from being around. They came from Newcastle as well, and they asked me to join, so I did that, and did the Too Much Rock and Roll album with them. We did a lot of touring, toured around Australia, played on Countdown, did all that kind of stuff that was happening in the mid to late 70s, released a Too Much Rock and Roll album. And then when Rabbit folded, I joined a band called Finch from Sydney.
Yep.
and we did an album called Contraband with them. Once again, more touring. We played with Status Quo. We toured with Dragon. With Rabbit, we toured with Ted Mulry Gang. We did a lot of travelling, a lot of gigs, and a lot of playing. And then after that, I moved up to the North Coast of New South Wales. I kind of had a break from rock for a while, and I had a music store, then I had a recording studio. And then my wife and Lynn and I got together in 95, and we formed a duo called Balance, and we just did some duo stuff around the North Coast. And then in 2006, we formed Bounty Hunters, and we've been doing that ever since. And we've got 3 albums out now. I'm working on our 4th album at the moment.
So back when you were with Rabbit, what sort of guitars were you playing then?
Okay, well, with Rabbit, when I joined Rabbit, I still had my Les Paul recording. I was playing in Marshall Brothers, but that had low impedance pickups. It was a really great guitar, but it was kind of clean sounding. When I joined Rabbit, Rabbit was a full-on rock band, and lots of high gain stuff, big amp stacks, Marshall stacks, and Bayer stacks, and so I needed something with a bit more grunt for that band. So I traded my Les Paul recording on a Les Paul Custom. I had a wine red Les Paul Custom, which was my main guitar through that period. And towards the end of Rabbit, just before I joined Finch, I traded that on a 1976 Gibson Explorer, which I've still got. I've still got that one to this day.
Do you still play that one?
I do, as a matter of fact, and it's actually in Port Mac Guitars right now in Port Macquarie, getting a refret. After all these years, after 43 years and a lot of work, I mean, the frets were kind of pretty worn out on it because I've played that guitar a lot over the years. It's got a few battle scars. It's got a cymbal cut in it. It's got a few dings, and it's kind of a little bit relic, but it's been naturally relic by myself. I bought it brand new, and yeah, it's a great guitar, and it's actually in the shop right now, being refretted and refurbished, ready for some more gigs.
Now, you mentioned Port Mac Guitars. Obviously, I would never have used them being from Adelaide, but I've heard some great things. So for anyone listening, if you're up that way, there's another recommendation for them if you need any guitar work.
Exactly. They're Rob Mestrick, the guy that owns it, is a good mate of mine, a good mate of ours, and they do a great job. I highly recommend them, and they ship all over Australia. I mean, this is I guess a bit of a free plug for him, but he's a mate. But jump online, check them out. They'll put some quite a bit of stuff through Rob, and he does great deals. And he ships anywhere in Australia. So, and they do have a really good repair service. They've got a Plek machine, and they can do great repairs and services. So yeah, they do a good job, the boys.
Awesome. So we've done a lot of talking about your guitars you were using back in the 70s. What sort of amplifiers were you using? Were they Plexis or?
I was using I had Marshall mainly. Marshall pretty much exclusively, right from the Marshall Brothers right through to Rabbit and Finch. I used the same amp. It was a 1959 model Marshall Super Lead 100 watt, no master body, just cranked that through a 1 or 2 quad boxes, and that was it. Not many pedals. I maybe used a wah occasionally. One of the early flanges, I had like an early Electro Harmonix electric mistress flange that I used a bit, but the effects were pretty minimal. It was mainly just plug in and turn it up and go for it.
Yeah, I've got sitting right next to a 1984 JCM 800, and although it's got a master volume, my God, the thing's loud, eh?
Absolutely. I was in the 90s. I was actually playing in a local band up the coast called the Dangerous Mongrels, and I was actually using a JCM 800 and a JCM 900, so 2 100 watt heads through 2 Marshall quad boxes. So that was a loud rig.
Yeah, I've got a 900 sitting there as well. What model numbers were they? Mine's my 800's a 22203, and the 400, the JCM 900's a 4100. Do you remember what yours were?
I can't really remember what the actual model numbers were, but I know that my JCM 100 was from the first year they came out, and so was my 900, because I was going to buy another 800 to go with the one I already had, and they just switched over from the 800 series to the 900 series. So whatever model numbers they were both from the first year of each of those series.
And which one did you prefer?
So both great amps. I mean, as I said, I was just up for a second 800, so I could have twice the power, basically. I think the 800, I had a slight preference on the 800 over the 900. Although 900 was a great amp as well, but I think the 800 is just, it's got that classic hard rock sound. 900 is maybe a tad more compressed. It's still a great amp. And when I ran them both together, well, if you've got one of each, you know what that sounds like. It's a mighty sound.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I like to do occasionally.
Yeah.
Big gigs,
yeah.
Small rehearsal studios, not so much.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like these days with venues and sound guys, they don't like you to be too loud on stage. So I guess it's kind of a compromise we need to make, unfortunately. But back in the day, you could just crank it up, and nobody cared, basically.
So what's your thoughts on digital modelling, stuff like Axe Effects and the Kempers?
Look, I think they've definitely got their place. I did have an Axe Effects too, and I just recently sold it, actually, because I found I wasn't using it enough. But having said that, a very good friend of mine, Stu Marshall, from Death Dealer, and he's playing Dungeon. He's one of the Australia's top metal players from Sydney. A Night Legion. He's in Night Legion as well. He swears by the Kemper. He loves the Kemper. He's tried the Fractal and the Kemper, and he really loves the Kemper for both live and studio work. I'm a bit more old school, I guess. I still like to have my valve amps cranking behind me, and I'm actually a Mesa Boogie player these days. I'm using Mesa Boogie amps exclusively now, and I just love the feel of the valves working, and a real speaker and a real amplifier. But that's just me. And as I said, a lot of guys like Pete Northcote, another brilliant player from Sydney, swears by his Axe Effects. I know Bob Spencer's using an Axe Effects in a 3 in the Angels. Sorry, not the Angels. He was in the Angels, in Tat. He's in Rose Tattoo now. Yeah. He's using one in Rose Tattoo. So, it's whatever floats your boat. But for me, I'm more old school. I like my valve amps.
Yeah, I'll be seeing Rose Tattoo next Friday night at the Gov. Be good to catch up with them.
Absolutely, yeah. Bob's an old mate of mine. All the guys are actually very good. I haven't met Jackie, but I go back with Angry, and I used to play with Mark Evans in Finch, Contraband.
Yeah.
And Di Pritchard's a good mate too, and Bob and I go way back to the '70s. So it's a great lineup. This current lineup, you'll enjoy that.
Yeah, I've seen every time that this lineup sort of came in Adelaide, they've had a different drummer.
Yeah.
But I've seen Mark and Bob and Di and Angry before, so it's always good to see them. This will be my 5th time.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and all reports Jackie's doing a great job. So, yeah.
100%. I don't see why he couldn't.
Exactly.
So who do you think would be some of the guitar players that people listening need to look out for in Australia?
Yeah, you talking Australian players or overseas players?
Yeah, Australian players. Who's some of the best in Australia at the moment, in your opinion?
There's so much talent out there at the moment. I mean, there's a heap of great players around. I guess, I'm kind of blues rock leanings. That's kind of my favourite style of music. That's what I play. But, in that genre, I think, the king is Kev Borich. Kev's been around for a long time, and he's in his 70s now, which is unbelievable when you see him. He doesn't look it. Still looks like a rock god, and he still plays like a rock god. He's one of those guys that just keeps getting better with age. We're actually doing some shows with Kev and John Swan and Taste from Melbourne at the Hot Fest tour in June. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Kev and I go back a long way, but he's just, as far as I'm concerned, he's the grand master of Australian blues rock guitar. And then you've got guys like Steve Edmonds is a great player, Dave Leslie from Baby Animals, fantastic player, Bob Spencer we mentioned, Di Pritchard, great player. Who else? I mean, there's a heap of them out there. Pete Northcote's a great player. They're all, all got their own styles, and there's a wealth of talent. And there's some of the great up and coming young guys are really hot too. So it's a great time for guitar, I reckon.
Can't forget yourself, David.
Well, I'm I'm flattered that you say that, Jakam. But I've been playing a long time. As I said, I've just realised it's like 50 years this year. That's a long time to play guitar, and I've loved every minute of it, and I'm certainly not going to stop as long as the fingers keep working. I'll be out there doing it. So we're bounty hunters and rocking out. Just love it.
That's awesome to hear, because I think a lot of people would be disappointed if you stopped. How did you actually learn to play the guitar, and what do you think is something that beginning players really need to look out and make sure that they're working on?
Good question. Really good question. Of course, once again, I grew up in a different era. There was no internet. There were no MP3 players, or there weren't even any CD players. It was vinyl, all vinyl. And I had a couple of guitar lessons early on to sort of learn the rudiments of sight reading, but and that's always a good thing if you want to get into sessions and all that sort of stuff. But I ended up, I sort of ended up playing by ear and learning stuff by ear, and I would just put a record on of a song I wanted to learn and lift the needle up and on the grooves until I sort of had figured out what was going on with the tracks. I remember when Led Zeppelin 4 first came out, and everyone wanted to be the first to learn how to play Stairway all the way through, and so that's how I did it back then. But today there's so much. YouTube's just amazing. There's just so much, a wealth of information out there. But my advice is get onto YouTube, check all that stuff out. It's great, but play. Try and get together with some mates and start jamming together and actually playing. And get out in the garage and make a bit of noise and try and write your own stuff and use the influences of the people you like listening to sort of get you started, but then take it from there and try and develop your own voice. So I think a lot of people get tired of playing in their bedroom, and you can see it on YouTube. Like there are cats on there that can play a million notes a second, but they maybe never have done a gig in their life. If you get out there in front of audiences and actually play, that's priceless to do that.
Yeah, it's something that I wish would sort of happen more too. I mean, as a young player myself, I've seen what you've seen, and I've done a little bit on stage personally. But you see those kids and their determination to just play guitar, but there's no audience. Their only audience is the camera. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, I know. The music scene is pretty tough at the moment. As I said, back when we were doing it back in the 70s, we were playing 4 or 5, 6 nights a week. There were so many gigs, there was so much work, and it's obviously the scene has changed since then. But having said that, for young guys, young players or young guys or girls, get together with your friends that are like-minded and put a little garage band together and do freebie concerts for your friends, or go to there's open mic nights where you can get up and play. Just try and get out and play wherever you can, rather than sort of just doing it in your bedroom. It's great to sort of practice in your garage and do all that, but to actually get out and try and get it in front of the people. Go busking. That's another. A lot of John Butler started off as a busker in Perth, and look where he is now. So there are ways of getting your stuff out there in front of the people.
And so, what else do you think that guitar students need to be paying attention to, David?
Okay, I think listening, getting a good ear, really listening hard, not just sort of going through scales like parrot fashion. Really listening to your and make sure you're in tune. That might sound like the most basic thing of all, but you probably heard it yourself, mate. About there's nothing worse than a guitar player playing out of tune. Make sure you get a good tuner and learn how to tune your guitar properly. Make sure it's set up properly, so you're not fighting a badly set up guitar. As I say, listen to what the other people you're playing with are playing, or listen to what you're learning. Try to develop a really good ear that way, and also rhythmic skills. I mean, as I said, there's a lot of people out there that can play a million notes a second, but it's very important to be able to hold a rhythm and hold a beat and be in time, and just chunk away on. Look at Malcolm Young and Keith Richards, guys like that who sort of just hold their bands together with that rhythm playing, and so to be a well-rounded guitarist, I think you should have good rhythm chops down as well as your lead play. Everyone wants to be a Steve Vai or a John Petrucci, but it's important to be well-rounded as a player.
So what impresses you more, a Malcolm Young or a Steve Vai type player?
Sorry, mate, I missed that. What was it? Say again, please?
What impresses you more in a guitar, someone who's a bit more of a tight rhythm player or a good lead player?
Well, both, really. I mean, if you can do both, that's fantastic. As I said, you mentioned Vi. I mean, Vi is absolutely brilliant, but he also is a great rhythm player as well as his blinding leads that he's known for. And Mal Young, God rest his soul. He was famous as the rhythm player from AC/DC, but he could also play a really mean lead. I mean, he did a lot of sessions for Albus Records where he actually played lead guitar.
Yeah,
he did the lead guitar on Stevie Wright's Evie, big hit he had with that. So, and then you look at guys like Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was a blistering lead player but also a killer rhythm player, and so I think I like to listen to guys that can do both really well, to be quite honest.
I think another player that his rhythm playing, I mean, a lot of people wouldn't call it rhythm playing, but it actually is Eddie Van Halen. Especially on the first record, it's kind of lead-based rhythm playing, but it's essentially rhythm, yeah.
You're absolutely right. Eddie Van Halen is a great example because he's got the whole package. The leads are unbelievable with the tapping stuff that he popularised and all that, but and very showy player, but also got a great groove. The guy can swing like crazy, and so yeah, good example there.
Same as Randy Rhoads.
Absolutely, another fantastic player, sadly missed.
Yeah. So, David, how do you think the Australian music scene has changed over the past 30 years? Has it gotten easier or harder?
It's definitely got harder. As I said, from someone that came up playing in the sort of late 60s, early 70s to now, as I mentioned earlier, back in those days, in the sort of 70s, early 80s, there were heaps of gigs. There were live bands everywhere. The scene has definitely changed with the advent of, poker machines and DJs and all that sort of stuff. I mean, lots of people whinge and moan about it, but there's no point in doing that. It's just the way it is. But I think the most important thing is to try and keep a live scene going and, to support venues that are putting on live acts, to, get up off the couch on a weekend and go out and support the live scene and actually go out and see a band. I think that's really important if we're going to keep this thing going.
And that's obviously how it sort of was back in the late 60s, early 70s. There was more of a music scene, I suppose you'd call it, eh?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely, definitely. Like every pub had a band on weekends, and a lot of gigs, a lot of pubs and clubs had, when I say clubs, not so much RSL type clubs, but rock clubs, like venues like in Sydney there was the Bondi Lifesaver and Checkers. They had bands every night of the week. In Melbourne it was Bombay Rock and Bananas and places like that. And we used to play in Adelaide back in the 70s in Rabbit. We used to do the gigs like the Arca Bar and Countdown in Hindley Street, and they used to go off. As a matter of fact, here's one for you. The first time we played Countdown in Hindley Street, this was in Rabbit, with Dave Evans, we'd heard about this band from Adelaide called Cold Chisel, right? And we'd never heard them before. And they were just starting out. And we came down to play at Countdown, and we saw the marquee out the front with their name up in big letters and support band Cold Chisel. And we're going, oh, here's this band we've heard about. We better check them out. And they came out and did the support slot. Of course, they were great. They were doing covers back in those days. They're doing Zeppelin and Bad Company and Free covers. But they were already amazingly good. We went, whoa, these guys are going to go somewhere. So there you go. But, it was a really healthy scene. You could literally go out any night of the week and catch a band in multiple venues.
And you can't do that now, even in Sydney, eh?
That's right. Unfortunately, the venues are getting few and far between. I mean, there are a few really great ones in Sydney. Frankie's in the inner city is a great venue. You've got the Hawkesbury Hotel out at Windsor, Bridge Hotel at Roselle. There are still a few pubs, trying to keep it going down there, but they're doing it tough. But, they're hanging in there. So as long as you've got, some venues giving it a shot and people coming out to support the bands, we'll keep it going.
And what about, with you guys, the Bounty Hunters being an independent band? Is it, because I know Rabbit was signed, is it easier or harder?
Well, yeah, it's definitely harder because you've got to do everything yourself. With Rabbit, we were signed to CBS, which is now Sony, of course, so it's like one of the biggest labels in the world. And, so they did all the promotions. They, between them and the management, they booked all the gigs, booked all the tours, booked your TV appearances. You just had to sort of turn up to where you were supposed to be, and it was all organised for you. But the downside of that is they kind of owned you, and the money wasn't great because the money was being spent on promoting the band, so we were kind of living on a shoestring back then. But at least being an indie artist, you've got control of your own career and your own music, but you've also, it's up to you to do all that admin stuff. Most of our week is spent doing the admin for the band, doing promotions, booking the gigs, doing all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a full-time job. But if you love it and you want control of your own career, that's kind of how it's got to be these days, because they're a very, unless you're a major act, it's pretty hard to get signed to a major.
And it pays off, does it?
Well, let me put it this way: you got to love it. It's the money sort of hasn't really changed much over the years. It's like it certainly hasn't gone up unless you're sort of in that super upper level bracket where you're selling out major tours and major stadiums and that. But at the ground level, going out and do what we do at sort of pubs and clubs and festivals and that, you break even, as long as you're paying expenses and making sure everyone's not out of pocket, and you get to sell a bit of merch. You can sell your CDs and your shirts and your merchandise to make a bit on top of that. You can do okay, but it's certainly not megastar level by any means, that's for sure.
And you still get to play the guitar on stage, which is the most important thing.
That is the most important thing, absolutely. Like, Len and I, when we're setting up and, people would say to us, geez, you guys got a lot of gear, you're lugging your gear in, setting up, and we say, yeah, well, that's what we actually get paid for, because those couple of hours you see us up on stage, that's, we do that because we love it, so, but yeah, that's, we say, yeah, we get paid to be our own roadies, basically, but, we do love it, and we're going to keep doing that. Our motto now is, because people say to us, how long are you guys going to keep doing this, guys? What, are you going to retire? We go, no, hell no. Retire? Are you kidding? We say we're going to rock till we drop, so that's it. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, that's the best mentality.
Yeah, got to keep, you got to use it or lose it, mate.
Do you have any plans for Adelaide dates?
We would love to come to Adelaide. We really would. I haven't played in Adelaide since the 70s, and Lynn hasn't been down there yet, so we really want to bring the Bounty Hunters to Adelaide. We're actually doing this Hot Fest tour, and it kicks off in Adelaide, but we're not on that. That's the one concert we're not on, because we were going to be over in the States at that time, but that's not happening now. So we were able to do the other gigs on the Hot Fest tour, which is Sydney, Melbourne, Gold Coast, and Townsville. But the first show kicks off at the Gov, and it's just a shame that we missed out on that one. But that's with Kev Borich and Swanee and Taste and Marie Wilson and a few other bands. So, but yeah, if we can get down to Adelaide, we certainly come down for sure. We'd love to play there.
We'd love to see you as well.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
So what you said before that you're a Mesa Boogie player exclusively. Can you run me through your rig?
Yeah, well, sure, absolutely. I got a few different ones, because, as I said, we're endorsed artists, so we get a nice get them for a nice price. But I've got my first boogie I bought was back in '82. I've got a Mark IIc, original Mark IIc with a wood grain cabinet, but it's just for studio work, and it doesn't come out on the road. But my main gigging amps are I've got a dual rectifier, tremor Reverb, which is a dual rectifier amp in a 2x12 cab, which is a great rock amp. And I've got a Mark V which I really like. It's really versatile. And for when I want a Marshall type sound, I've got a Triple Crown 50 TC50, which is kind of Messr's take on a Marshall type sound with EL34s. And I run that through either a 1x12 box or a 4x12 Messr quad, depending on the gig. That's really the sort of Marshall type sound. And I've got one of the new Fillmore 50s, which is that sort of take on a blackface Fender. So and a couple other bits and pieces. But they're my main go-to amps for that pretty much covers any sound I need to get.
And what are your guitars in your live rig?
Well, I've got a couple of signature models that I really love. I've got a signature Flying V made by Anestis Mantaranis from Rebel Custom Guitars in Sydney. He built that vehicle me 2 years ago, actually, pretty much on the dot. It was its second year anniversary yesterday when he presented it to me. It's an amazing guitar. It's got lace Alumitone pickups on it, and a custom pick guard, and it's all custom made, handmade. It's my signature model, and my wife Lynn has a matching bass. It's a one-off, only one in the world of a Rebel V bass. So they're really they're great guitars. And we also had a couple of guitars made for us in Japan a few years ago by Sonic Guitars in Tokyo. They're a boutique builder over there. I've got a Strat style, and Lynn's got a J-bass style bass. So they're really great. Apart from that, the usual suspects. I've got a couple of Strats that I really love, and Les Pauls, and a couple of Tellys. SG. I probably like that SG, and as I said, my old Explorer. It's coming back into action. So, nice little selection of tones there to work with. So, depending on what sort of sound I want to get.
What's in your pedal board?
Good question. It changes. It's in it's in a constant state of change, depending on I'm always swapping stuff out. But at the moment, let me see, what have we got on there? I've got just a small board at the moment, because we're doing these festivals and we're doing some fly gigs, so I can't take anything too big. So I've got a little pedal train board that just goes in a carry bag, and on it at the moment I've got a Dunlop Mini Wah. I've got a Dunlop Mini Volume. As I said, all sort of small pedals on this board. A TC Mini Polytune tuner. My drive pedals at the moment on there are a Full Tone Full Drive 2 version 2, which I'm really loving, and also a Full Tone OCD version 2, which has got it's a really good grunt pedal. What else we got on there? There's I'm using a Eventide H9 for my time-based effects, like Leslie, flanging, phasing, chorusing, vibrato, tremolo, that sort of stuff. I've got an H9 to handle that, and I've just got a little TC flashback delay on there. So it's a pretty basic board.
And what power supply do you use?
Voodoo Lab Pedal Power 2.
Would you recommend that one? Because a few people have been asking me on the best power supply, and I use an ISO brick myself. So
yeah, look, there are a few good ones out there. I think there's the T-Rex pedal tank. I think it rates pretty well. I know that there's I think Whirlwind do one too. There are quite a few options out there, but I had read some good reviews on the Voodoo Lab, so I've got two of them. Depending on which board I use. So, and I've had no trouble with them at all.
Awesome.
They do the job well. I mean, I'd really love to get one of those gig rigs built by Dan Steinhardt. That'd be the ultimate, but they're pretty expensive to get all that set up. We met Josh Smith last year when he was out touring, and what a great player he is. And he's got a really extensive pedal board rig he's just had built by Dan Steinhardt from the gig rig, and that would be the ultimate, but I mean, that's kind of Rolls-Royce stuff. It's getting way up there price-wise.
So what's in your main pedal board?
Well, I've got a variety of drive pedals, and I really like the full tone stuff. I've got a lot of full tone stuff. I've also got a couple of pedals that I've seen that I saw Josh Smith using that I find are really great. There's a couple of love tone pedals. There's one called a Chula, which is just kind of like a boost. It gooses the front end of your amp, get to give a bit of extra boost there. There's another one called the Purple Plexi, which is kind of pretty self-explanatory. It's like it gives you really good Marshall crunch tones. Another one is called the Dualist, and it's a great Strat pedal. It's really voiced really well for Strats. It gives you that Stevie Ray through a tube screamer type tone. Excuse me. And another one that is actually Josh's signature pedal is a Myriad Fuzz. And it's the most gnarly fuzz pedal I've ever come across. It's amazing. It goes from it's got a germanium and silicon transistors in it, and you can blend them in as to how much you want of each. And it can go from really spitty, sort of nasty stuff right to a really smooth, creamy distortion. So it's great. On my big delay board, when I've got room to use it, I've got a Hughes and Kettner Rotosphere Leslie simulator, which is fantastic. It's actually got a valve in it. And I use a TC Electronic Alter Ego Vintage Echo, and a full tone Super Trem, and a full tone Deja Vibe for the vibe effects. But that's when I've got room to sort of bring out my big guns. But apart from that, I just use the small board.
What about in the studio? What's your go-to effects there, or your go-to studio rig? Sorry.
Well, in the studio, and we've only just been in the studio doing 4 new tracks, actually, which we're going to be bringing out as a limited edition EP fairly soon, actually. When I'm tracking rhythm parts, I really go straight into the amp, guitar straight into the amp, and just turn it up and to get that rhythm tone, because I don't like my rhythm tones to be too dirty. I like a bit of definition there. I guess it's a bit of an old Malcolm and Angus thing. When you listen to those AC/DC tones, they're a lot cleaner than what they actually sound. So it's just on the edge of breakup. So that's how I kind of dial my rhythm tones in. And I'll always double my rhythm part with 2 different guitars. I play through 2 different amps or 2 different amp settings on 2 different guitars and pan them left-right. So you get that kind of that really fat sound. But for lead, it depends on what type of sound I'm going for. I might just use an overdrive to get a bit more juice into the lead, or a fuzz. And I usually add delays and stuff like that later in the mix. I usually play pretty dry, maybe a little bit of reverb when I'm playing in the studio.
And you add everything later in post.
Sometimes, if there's a sort of a timed delay part or a slapback delay part that's really integral to that tone, I'll print that as I'm recording. But if I want to leave the options open, I'll just record with, as I said, maybe just a hint of room sound, reverb on the guitar, and then pick a delay or whatever to add later, or flange it or chorus it or whatever. But it depends on the part. I mean, for one of the tracks on these this latest recordings we did, the engineer Russell Pilling from Damien Gerard, who was great, he said, I can hear a clean guitar part in this section with a like a phase 90 on it, an old MXR phase 90. So we dragged that out, and it was just the perfect sound for that part. But it's only kind of a subliminal part in the song. It just adds a bit of texture. But so it's kind of that's the fun of being in the studio, I guess. You get a chance to go, let's try this or let's try that, and see if it works. And I used the Myriad Fuzz actually on one track in this latest session, and for a really nasty sort of a low part in one of the songs that sort of just comes in under the main riff, and it was pretty brutal. Sounded pretty killer. So and that was Russell's idea as well. He said, let's put a really low dark fuzz on this and see what happens. So love experimenting in the studio. That's the fun bit.
And so how do you approach songwriting, David, and what's your sort of headspace when you and Lynn are coming up with ideas and riffs and melodies and hooks and all that?
Yeah, that's another great question, because it can happen a lot of different ways. I'm usually the riff guy, and Lynn's usually the melody girl because she's a singer as well as the bass player. So she'll usually come up with a melody, or actually these days she's writing a lot on bass, and she might come up with a bass riff and then put a melody around that, and then I'll hang some chords off that or a riff or whatever, and then she'll usually work on some lyrics. So it's very much a team effort. Sometimes I'll come up with an idea of a hook or an idea for a chorus, and we'll expand on that. And sometimes Lynn will, one of our songs, Hot on Your Heels, which was off the first album we wrote, walking on the beach one day. We went walking our dog on the beach, and we just came up with this idea and came back to the house and quickly put it down on the phone. Voice memos are our friend. You carry your phone everywhere. You just whack it down on that, and then you flesh it out, start arranging it, start fiddling around with keys and arrangements, and then go from there, pretty much.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And I suppose with all the experience you would have had, I suppose it sort of becomes second nature, eh?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we've got, being, muso family, husband and wife, guitar player, bass player, well, there's always, get a couple of guitars and a couple of basses out and a couple of amps set up ready to go. And we'll, at any time of day or night, we can just go, hey, I've got an idea. Let's plug in and work on it. And, we might finish dinner when, most couples might go and jump on the computer or go and watch something on Netflix or something. We'll grab out the instruments and have a jam, and we're always recording little bits and pieces and little snippets of stuff. We've got a whole backlog of stuff to go through and hopefully turn into songs.
So what's Lynn's musical history? Where did she learn to play, and where did she learn to play bass?
Well, she goes back, like her mother says, she was singing, she was humming tunes when she was crawling around the floor as a baby. So she was humming tunes before she could even speak, which is pretty funny. But so she's always been musical, and she did a lot of singing and stuff in high school and uni. She played in Sydney in bands in university, mainly as the lead singer, but she also taught herself how to play guitar, rather. So I first met her when she came into my studio in Port Macquarie to demo some songs that she'd written. She just played nylon string guitar and sang, and they were great songs, and she had a great voice, and she could accompany herself on guitar. But she had also played bass. She was in an Irish band in Sydney called Drops of Brandy. They were doing traditional Irish music like Celtic music and jigs and reels and all that sort of stuff. They had a residency at the Hilton Hotel in Sydney, which was pretty big. And so she actually played bass in that band, but she hadn't played bass for many years until the bass player we had at the time in Bounty Hunters had to leave. Actually, funnily enough, it was Rob, who owns Port Mac Guitars. He just got too busy with his shop, so he had to give up playing because he needed to devote time to his shop. So he had to leave the band. So we were thinking, well, we'd better get a new bass player. And we were just working in a new drummer at the time. And Lynn was just filling in on bass while we worked this new drummer in, and she was playing great, and we went, why should we get a new bass player? You're doing a great job. Let's just stay three-piece. So that's how we've been for the last 5 or 6 years, I guess. So she's just loving playing bass, and she's just getting, she just keeps getting better and better at it. So this last album, the bass sounds are monstrous. So she loves it.
That's really cool. That's really inspiring as well.
Yeah. I'm really proud of her because she once she sort of picked up, the bullet and went, all right, okay, I'll do it, but I've got to work hard at it because I've got to bring myself up to the standard of this band. And she did, and she worked really hard at it, and she's really solid. And she locks in with Mick O'Shea on drums now, and they're a really killer rhythm section. It leaves me a lot of space to do what I need to do on guitar, so it's great.
Which sometimes is to just go crazy with a good lead break, eh?
Exactly. And I know that these guys have got my back. When I can go off and do a lead break, and I know Lynn and Mick have got they've got the bottom end and the beats covered very well, and because they're a really solid rhythm section together. I mean, Mick O'Shea's got the he's got the most solid kick drum foot I've ever heard of any drummer I've ever played with, and it's pretty frightening when you get in front of that kick drum on stage. But Lynn just locks in with Tim, and they just put down this really solid basis, and so I can go up and have a great time on top of that.
And when do you expect your new EP to be released?
Well, it's all been recorded. We had it mastered in Nashville, actually, for the first time. We tried a mastering house over there that was recommended by Russell, our engineer, and they did a really great job. So the tracks are all done. We're just waiting on artwork now and get things finalised. So we want to have it out by June for this Hot Fest tour. So it'll definitely be out by June, maybe May. So, but I'll let you know when it's about to come out for sure.
Wicked. Is it going to be physical or digital only?
No, we're going to get a limited edition of CDs done. We're going to get limited CDs, and then it'll be digital after that. But there will be some hard copy CDs to come out, which we're going to have to take on tour with us.
Yeah, that'll be wicked. I'll buy one.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll make sure we organise one for you, mate.
That'd be wicked.
No worry.
So, David, when you were learning to play guitar, what were some of the challenges that you remember facing, and some of the things that might have been difficult to master?
Yeah, good question. Another good question. Well, when you're first starting out, of course, it hurts because you're playing a guitar. The guitar hasn't got very good action, and you've got these heavy steel strings, and the strings are about half an inch off the fretboard. So that was the first thing I remember about being difficult about it, is it actually physically hurting until you sort of build up a bit of finger strength and you build your calluses up. But I mean, that was then. That was like back in the dark ages. These days, you can get really good beginners level guitars that are set up really well and play really well. So I think that's great because, pain really shouldn't be part of the equation. But from a musical point of view, I think just coordinating, making sure you get the coordination between your right and left hands, making sure your picking is really clean and not sort of whamming with your note selection on your left hand, assuming you're a right-handed player. I think that getting that coordination between your two hands is really important. And as I said before, developing your ear, making sure you're playing in tune, and if you want to sort of work up the speed, start out slowly. If you're learning a scale or a run or a lick, whatever, always good to work with a metronome or a click track or a drum machine or anything just to give you a solid beat, and start out slow until you get every one of those notes, really worked out perfectly in time, and then up to tempo a bit until you, and do that gradually until you bring it right up to speed. And I think that's the best way to work on sort of difficult passages, is to start out slow, make sure you've got it fully nailed before you move up the next level of speed.
That's really good advice, David. Thanks for that. I'm sure a lot of the young players would like to hear that, stuff like that.
Oh, that's a pleasure, that's not only come from me. If you talk to any of the great guitar players like Greg Cork, who's the great Fender clinician from America, he's a blistering player, but he really adheres to that philosophy as well of starting out slow and building up, and that way you'll when you do get up to speed, it's going to sound great.
Is there any new gear, David, that's on your want list?
No, at this stage, well, there is actually. I can't say too much about it at this point because we're not allowed to announce yet. But we do. Lynn and I have actually been offered an endorsement with a guitar product, and as soon as we can announce it, I'll let you know. But we've kind of sworn to secrecy a little bit at the moment, but it's really, really exciting. And as soon as we make the announcement, I'll be flicking you a message and let you know what it's all about. But so we're really excited about that. It's not one of the big brands. It's not a Fender or a Gibson or a PRS. It's kind of a boutique brand, but we've been offered an endorsement with these guys, and we've seen what we're getting, and it's really exciting. So as soon as I'm able to announce it publicly, I'll let you know. Apart from that, I do have another Mesa coming, which is the new California Tweed, but they're not going to be out here for another couple of months. That's a new model, which is like a vintage tweed Fender style amp. It's just a single channel amp. There's no bells and whistles. There's no master volume. Oh yeah, sorry, it has master volume, but it doesn't have channel switching or anything like that on it. It's just a really straight up amp, and it's been getting great reviews in the States. So yeah, they're the two newies that are coming. They are new guitars that I can't, unfortunately, divulge the brand just yet, but I will when I can. And the new Cali Tweed in a few months' time.
And what's the one piece of gear that you can't live without?
Oh, that's a tough one. That is a really tough one. Yeah. Well, I guess if you got to boil it down to one thing, I mean, I could say a guitar or an amp or an effect, but they're all dependent on each other. So I guess you have to have one thing, and it would be a really good acoustic, and that would be probably my Martin acoustic, because with an acoustic guitar you can play anywhere. You don't need electricity. You can ride on them. So yeah, I reckon probably a desert island thing. It'd have to be a good acoustic.
What if I said you could take an amp too?
Okay. Well, at this point in time, I guess my favourite amp is the Fillmore, the Bessa Fillmore. I'm really loving that amp. I guess too because it's the latest one I got. But not only that, I'm just really loving the tones in it. It's got a super. The clean sounds are beautiful, and it's got a really great overdrive sound, and it takes pedals really, really well. Guitar wise, that's a tough one. My R8 Les Paul 58 reissue Les Paul Burst is pretty special, and I've never had Gibson Custom Shop Les Paul before, and Lynn got this one for me last year, and it's a really special guitar. So yeah, I guess electrics wise, I love all my guitars. I love the signature models, but Desert Island, I guess it would be the R8 and the Fillmore.
That's a good selection. I'm pretty actually pleased to hear that.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when you got a few that you really love. But yeah, if you got to boil it down, I guess that would get pretty much all the sounds I need to get.
I definitely think so.
Yes, for sure. I mean, it'd be nice to have a Strat or a Kelly along there as well. But the Les Paul's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, personally, I'd just take my SG and my JCM 800. That'd do me.
That would certainly do.
Yeah, 100%. I think it would do
Absolutely.
most guitar players.
Yeah, that's a great rig. SG and a JCM 800, great rig.
So, on a recorded album, David, what's your favourite guitar tone?
Favourite guitar tone? Okay. That's a hard one. I think I've got to go back to a really old one, and I mean, because there've been so many great guitar tones. Stevie Ray, man, and I love Jimi Hendrix. Like Jimmy's tones were out there, and Jimmy Page, great. So Jeff Beck with just his fingers and a Strat and a Straight-on Marshall, amazing. But I think the most memorable tone for me, and it was the one that, and I'm going back to an album that made me know that I wanted to be a guitar player for the rest of my life, and that was that Cream album, World Aspire Live at the Fillmore, and it was Eric Clapton's tone on the track Crossroads, and that was a 335 through a Plexi Marshall, and when you listen to his solo on that track, it's just like liquid velvet. It's unbelievable.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, and that's what made me prick my ears up when I heard that track and went, what is that? And yeah, it was all over. I had to be a guitar player.
And what happened to your Plexis from the Rabbit days?
Well, I traded I didn't actually have a Plexi. It was a metal front, but it was a 1972 Super League 100 JMP. And I played that right through the rock days, as I said. But when Contraband wound up in '79, that was when I moved up the coast. I got out of the Sydney city scene for a while, and I only had a little car. I had a little Ford Escort, and I literally could not fit my 100-watt Marshall head and my quad box and everything in my Ford Escort. So I had to get a smaller amp. So I traded my Marshall and my quad box in on a little Music Man 110. No, I had two 10s in it. No, sorry, 112 combo amp, Music Man combo amp that I could chuck in the backseat of my Escort, Ford Escort, and still do gigs. And I wish I still had that Marshall, now, but it did serve me well for so many years. It was a great amp, and it's on 3 albums that I played on. So which is Marshall Brothers Band. It's on the Too Much Rock and Roll album by Rabbit. All my guitar tones on that are my Les Paul custom through that amp, and it's all over the Contraband album as well, which is my Explorer through that amp. So, it's the only amp I used on 3 albums and on all those tours. So, yeah.
You could have just got a bigger car.
Well, that's true. That's true. I probably should have. I should have made the decision to get a station wagon rather than a little rally car. But anyway, sometimes you live to regret these things. But I have no regrets. I got a lot of use out of that amp, and I hope it's still going somewhere. I hope someone's still getting joy out of it like I did.
If anyone knows where it is, I'm sure either David or I would like to buy it. So
I'd be interested to see if it's still around somewhere. Yeah. So if it is, and I wish I'd kept the serial number, but I didn't. In those days I didn't bother with stuff like that. But it was a really great amp. I put some hours on it. I went through some tubes on that thing, I tell you. But it served me really well.
Was there any modifications made to it?
No, it was stock standard. Apart from replacing power valves when they needed to, and I think we replaced the preamp valves a couple of times. But apart from that, no, just stock standard. Yep. Yeah. It was a good noise.
I mean, some of my questions are like really guitar nerdy, but it's what we're here for. What sort of strings do you use?
I use Elixir. I've used pretty much every brand of string on the market over the years. I've used Ernie Balls, GHS, D'Adarios. There are a lot of good string brands out there. But the thing I like about Elixirs is I've got really toxic sweat, right? And I sweat a lot on stage. And normal strings, because I'm a perspiration must have some sort of weird acid in it or something. I just chew through strings like crazy. Even though I wipe them off, after a gig, I always wipe the guitars down, and I still chew through them. And I get really good mileage out of Elixirs. Plus, I like the, some people don't like the feel of the coated strings. The new Opti webs, I've found that they're a thinner coating than the nano webs. I'm preferring those. They feel just like a normal string to me, and I get really good wear out of them. I like the sound of them, and plus we're endorsed by them. So which is great, because when you're playing a lot of gigs and you've got a few guitars to keep in strings, it helps to have a bit of help with that. So Elixir have been really good to us. Been using Elixir bass strings, and I use Elixir guitar strings exclusively, and I love them.
Now, obviously, David, we're friends on Facebook, and I see a lot of your guitar pictures. And I'm not being rude, but how many guitars do you own?
Mate, that's kind of classified information. Let me just say, I've got a few. I've got all the bases covered that I need, and. Yeah, well, put it this way: it's nowhere near like Donna Mass's collection. Nothing is, but and I know Pete Northcott's got more guitars than me. He's got way more than me. But yeah, look, I've got quite a few, and I'll let you know that just between us. But it's not the sort of thing I want to sort of broadcast. But I've got all the sort of tones that I really need covered. Put it that way.
I'm only asking because I'm jealous, dude. I'm jealous.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, I know a lot of guys. They go, "Oh, I've got so many guitars." Well, it's not something that I kind of broadcast. But I really love the ones that I have. And my thing is, if a guitar's not getting played, if I find that it's sitting in the storage bay, and not being used, I'll move it on. I'll sell it. because I think, guitars need to be played, and they need to be played regularly. And if I play all of my guitars regularly, they all get a run on stage, they all get a run in the studio, and they all get a run at home. And I find if one hasn't been played for a while, I think, well, you need to go to someone who's going to play you and love you. So that's how I work anyway.
That's fair enough. There's a lot of hoarders out there that keep all the good stuff for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I really can't stand is when guitars are kept in display cases or under a bed or something and not get played. That to me is like cruelty to guitars. That's right. These things are meant to, when you play a guitar all the time, it responds. It definitely responds. If you pick up a guitar that hasn't been played, and I know from first hand because I've been servicing some guitars for a good mate of mine who his brother is actually a collector, and he's not a player, but I've been servicing these guitars for him and bringing them back to life because they need that attention and they need to be played. And I think he's realising that now that they need to be played regularly. And I've just said, well, if you want them played, man, I'll live with me for a couple of weeks. I'll play them for you and then give them back to you. So they really need that love and attention for sure.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone say that, but it definitely makes sense now that I have.
Yeah, well, it really is true. In another case, a few years ago, I was given as a gift, which was amazing, this by a very good friend, this old Maton jazz guitar, arch-top jazz guitar, right, an F250 Supreme, and this very dear friend of ours bought it new in Melbourne in 1956, and he was going to learn guitar, and the salesman, he wanted to play flamenco, and the salesman in the store in 1956 sold him this jazz arch top and told him that was a flamenco guitar. Well, he saw him coming, but anyway, Ross had this guitar, and he had a couple of lessons, and then he became a film cameraman, and he went out off touring the world shooting movies, and the guitar literally sat in the wardrobe for 40, 50 years. And he brought it out and showed it to me one day. He said, I must show you my old Mason. And he opened the case, he actually brought it out of the case. And of course it had 50 years worth of grime and grunge on it, and the strings were just total rust, the frets were total rust. But it was still in reasonably good shape, but it had never been played, just been sitting in its case. And I said, man, I very slowly tuned it up to C below E because I didn't want to tune up a pitch because I thought this thing, the neck might just snap off it if I tune it up a pitch. So I tuned it up to, low C, and I could see the potential in it. And I just said, man, that's a beautiful guitar. He said, well, I want you to have it. I went, no, let me make you an offer. I'll see what the market price is. I'll make you an offer. He said, no, I'm never going to play it. He said, I'm just going to sit there and rock. He said, I want you to have it and play it and love it. And I went, well, I'll be the custodian of it then. He said, no, it's yours. Take it. So, which was amazing. So over the course of a couple of weeks, first thing I got it home, I cleaned it up, cleaned the frets, cleaned all the fingerboard, all the body, and then I put light strings on it, and I gradually brought them up to pitch over the course of a couple of weeks. And the thing just came back to life, It literally came back. I could hear it waking up like it'd been in a 50-year coma and waking up, and it just sounds gorgeous now. It's got that beautiful arch-top jazz tone, So, I take it back and play it to Ross, and he's mega happy because his guitar's now doing what it's supposed to be doing rather than rotting away in a cupboard somewhere.
And you could tune it back up to standard E tuning, or it was...
Yeah. I did it gradually because I wanted the neck to sort of become accustomed to the pressure. And it's got a truss rod, but it hasn't got an adjustable truss rod. So I didn't want to take the risk of, snapping the neck. So I brought it up very, very gradually. And I still use fairly light strings on it. I haven't put heavy strings on it. But, the neck's fine. It's tuned up to pitch now. It sounds great.
That's wicked. And that was what year, 1958, did you say?
Not 1956.
1956, wow.
Yeah, it's this beautiful, got this beautiful sunburst, that real sort of rich sunburst top, and it's a deep body. It hasn't got a pickup on it. I thought about putting a floating pickup on it, but no, I've just kept it acoustic because that's what it's meant to be. And yeah, it's a great guitar.
Has it made any studio appearances?
It has made one studio appearance because Lynn and I actually recorded a kind of jazz version of the old Patsy Cline song, or actually Willie Nelson song, Crazy, because Ross and his wife Sue used to love that song. So after he'd given me the guitar, we recorded a version of that using that guitar and just, using a lot of jazz chords in it, which that guitar's meant to play. And we made a little CD of it just for them and presented it with them the next time we saw them, and they kind of got all misty-eyed and they loved it. So, yeah, it's been recorded really well.
That's awesome. That's a really nice story, actually.
Yeah, well, it was I was blown away with his generosity. So, and every time I play that guitar, we think of our dear friends and who aren't getting any younger, and so it was a really great story.
Yeah, that's beautiful, eh?
Cool. Yeah. Warms your heart, that one.
Yeah. So besides the Hot Fest tour, what else has this year got for the Bounty Hunters, plus the EP release?
Yeah, well, we're Saturday week we're doing a benefit show in Newcastle. It's for a sound guy, Jeff Sykes, who's fallen on ill health, and he's got some pretty heavy medical expenses to meet. So the whole Newcastle rock music community have rallied around, and there's a whole heap of bands playing at the Wickham Park Hotel on Saturday the 13th. So we're playing on that. All the bands are donating their time for that to raise some money for Sykesy to help with his medical expenses. And then after that, it's we haven't got anything, I don't think, till the Hot Fest tour. And then we'll be just lining up some more touring later in the year. So the Hot Fest tour is probably the next thing, along with the EP release, to come along after the Wicco gig. So, but if we can, we're actually working in with one of the guys, or two of the guys that are organising the Hot Fest tour, are based in Melbourne, and they've said they want to help us to kind of get a few gigs around the country. So hopefully they might be able to line up something in Adelaide for us, and if we can get down there, we certainly will be. We'd love to play down there.
Yeah, that would be awesome, especially if we can see you guys in Adelaide.
Well, we'll work on it, mate. We'll see if we can make it happen.
What are your last words and advice to young guitar players out there?
Okay. All right, words of advice. Well, first of all, do it because you love it, and love what you do. I mean, you've got to have the passion. The passion for it is because it's as you know, it's not an easy thing to do, playing guitar. But it's a challenge. But if you really love it, and you know what it's like when you get the bug, you just can't put it down. Work hard. Work hard at it. Just keep the passion alive, and make sure you really enjoy what you're doing. Try and get together with friends that are like-minded, so you can get together and jam. Learn as much as you can. Listen to the players you like, and try and learn stuff from them. Jump on YouTube and check out some YouTube lessons, but make it a well-rounded thing. Try and get out and play. Real jams, real gigs. But the main thing is, and never give up. Never let anyone tell you can't do it. If you want to do it and you love it, just do it and enjoy it. Getting the enjoyment out of it is the main thing, and that's what it's all about. And being able to bring joy to other people through what you play. So just love it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the interview, David. It was awesome.
You're very welcome, Jakam.